What's up, everybody? It's your man DGL for DGL Army on Twitch for YouTube. Today's game was played in 1956. The players are the Petrosian playing the white pieces and Vladimir Simagin. That is one hard last name to pronounce. I'm sure everyone is probably rolling their eyes that I cannot pronounce that last name. Oh well. One day I'm working on it. But okay. So, let's jump right into it. Petrosian opening with knight f3. We get a old Indian. I just want to jump through the opening. And knight d2. Logical. We had a trade on e2 and e5. Okay, so standard break d5 and c5. Alright, so the center is now locked. Rook b1. Wanting to push b4. Knight e8, f5 now. Typical King's Indian, old Indian idea. The breakthrough. b4, playing on the queen side, opening lines. b6, a4, and we have bishop f6, which prepares, actually, bishop g5, trying to trade black's somewhat bad bishop. I've never considered it a bad bishop. I mean, technically, when you look at the pawn structure, it's a bad bishop, but all of us King's Indian players know that this bishop is the star piece, right? Yeah. But okay. Black simply tries to exchange it. Petrosian plays king h1 to actually free the g1 square to avoid what I mentioned earlier, the trade, because now bishop g1 is available and was played. Knight c7 rerouting. King b1, or not king b1, rook b1 of course, and knight a6. Looking at the c5 square. Knight b3, and knight c5. Okay. So white took on c5. And took back with the b pawn. We can take a look at knight takes briefly. Then bishop takes c5. And if d takes c5, white has a very strong passed d pawn. And if b takes c5, rook b7, oops, rook here of course, white is really quick on the b file. Black took, and then white took on f5. Black took back. Important to note, if rook takes f5, then white has the very nice spot for a knight on e4, hitting d6, tickling c5. It's a very good square, and it can't really be challenged very easily, as we'll see soon, in fact. So, continue. Black took back, and white played g4, which at first seems kind of, you're taught not to put your king pawns up advanced so much. I mean, there's obviously exceptions, but at first glance it kind of looks like white is weakening his king. But in fact, this has a very clever idea. White simply wants to get a knight here. As mentioned before, it's the ideal square, and white simply gets rid of the f-pawn to get the knight there. So after black took, white played knight e4, continuing with the idea. Bishop f4, going to a good square. and rook b7 getting on the rank. Knight c7, rerouting the knight as well as somewhat closing the 7th rank. Took back, knight e8, and g5. Note that with knight e8, black was trying to get a knight f6 to challenge this great knight on e4. With g5, white says no, that's not going to happen. Simply covering it. Queen c8. Rook e7. Queen h3. Rook f3. And queen g4, which it's not a mistake, but it gives white an opportunity for an interesting move that, yeah, which was not played, which I, in a way, understand, because the lines are a bit tricky. But just to show the idea that white had here, he could have played knight to f6, which, okay, black needs to take that piece. So let's say knight takes, g takes, then the threat of rook g3 looms, as well as the even more critical rook g7. Both would win the queen. So, for example, if black plays a nothing move with a6, rook g3 wins the queen. So, a6 is obviously not a great move. And also, let's say the queen tries to escape with a square like c8. Then white even has queen g2 with an eventual mate on g7. So, queen c8 also not an option. Black can also take the pawn, but that just runs into rook g3. So, yeah, none of these options are pretty good for black. Oops. Possibly, well, a possibly better try could be king h8, after which queen d3, queen g8, and rook g7, which is why I'm a bit hesitant to call it better, because as you can see, black is losing the queen in quite a few lines. It appears to be forced, in fact, but perhaps puts a bit more resistance to black, or to white, excuse me. So, after g takes f6, the best move probably is just bishop g5, playing to meet queen d3 with e4, but it still doesn't look so good, say after rook takes e4. Okay, let's go back.
Check.
After this check, we just looked at this, but also possible, which is a bit, this is actually the more critical line, giving up the exchange and knight takes. And, okay, from a computer standpoint, this is completely winning for white, but for a game of humans, it's pretty unclear. There's the e-pawn, strong bishop, etc. A lot of points. But white also has a rook on the 7th rank, rook e6 as a possible next move. We can label this unclear, but the computer does say it's winning for white, liking the exchange up. So okay, this was a possible idea for white here, but as mentioned before, Petrosian did not play this. In fact, opted for, let's see, queen d3, and now bishop takes h2, which opens up the line for the rook. So if, say here,
check,
you win the rook. But you think, okay, hold on, can't white
check,
take the rook with check, and then take the bishop? No, because now the king is hitting the rook, humorously enough. Almost taking advantage of the surroundings of the white pieces. Clever tactics. But now white
check,
can win 2 pieces for a rook, and does so. So, we reached this position after 33 moves. And, as I check my notes briefly. So white simply hits the d-pawn. Let's say black tries to defend it. He didn't, but let's just take a look at rook d8. Sample line could be queen f1,
check,
king e7, queen
check,
f6, king e8. So let's just say for a second, king went to d7, queen
check,
takes, looks pretty good. So king e8, and now
check,
check. If king d7 here,
check,
knight f6. If king e7,
check,
this actually leads to
checkmate,
mate. So king f7, forced. And now
check,
queen takes h7. Yeah. If king e8 here,
check,
we have this line,
check, checkmate,
mate. Very nice. So instead, king f8, and you can look at this a bit more. Looks pretty clear cut. White is in excellent shape and should win. But just to give you, that was a small taste of what can happen. Let's go back. As mentioned, this didn't happen. Rook e7 played, white grabbed the pawn, and black grabbed g5.
check,
We have the check in king g8, knight e4 back. Also possible earlier, by the way, was queen to g2, getting the queens off simply. Alright. That was possible, winning, of course. But this is good enough. Rook g7, d6. A bit of shuffling took place.
check,
Knight g5. And black grabbed the pawn.
check,
So white gave the check, and king g7. And I wonder if you could see this very nice tactical combination which took place here. It is not rook takes e7, or excuse me, e7. It's not knight takes f7. It's a bit more tactical than that. If you're thinking queen h8
check,
with the idea of if black takes, taking with a fork, black doesn't have to take and can play a move like king h6. And this is, okay, this is still a fork. There you go, okay. Okay, king g6. To illustrate my point. Doesn't work directly. It's a good move, but we're looking for the tactical shot I mentioned before. So I'll give you a couple seconds to look at this. Alright, so queen h8 was the idea,
check,
but after bishop takes e5 check, taking, and now
check,
queen h8. Notice if the king goes up, the queen's hanging, and after the king takes,
check,
the knight f7 trick, and black resigned. So, nice game by Petrosian. I'm gonna go get some coffee, and we'll be right back. For people on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. It's all cool. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to start streaming again in a little bit. Thanks for checking out. See you guys soon.